welcome. You got to train me in these things, dear. Hi, everyone. Hopefully you guys are having a good day and a good morning and everything. Today we are doing lesson 36. My holiness envelops everything I see, with today's text of chapter 4, The Illusions of the Ego, and section 5, The Ego-Body Illusion. All right, let's begin. Oh, and if my eyes seem a little red and puffy, it's because I got to talk to my son today. He's stationed overseas, and, being a mom, I love my baby. He's in the military, so I got a little emotional. I cried. He's my baby, my only child. So I do worry about him at times, but I know he's safe and he's well looked over in all ways. But it was wonderful to hear his voice. And I just get this expanding sense here in my chest that just goes and goes and goes. And it gives me such joy that I got to speak with him today. It's been months, and he's been gone for years. So, we miss him. All right, let's begin. Section 5, the ego-body illusion. All things work together for good. There are no exceptions except in the ego's judgment. The ego exerts maximal vigilance about what it permits into awareness. And this is not the way a balanced mind holds together. The ego is thrown further off balance because it keeps its primary motivation from your awareness and raises control rather than sanity to predominance. The ego has every reason to do this according to the thought system which gave rise to it and which it serves. Sane judgment, which gave rise to it, Sane judgment would inevitably judge against the ego and must be obliterated by the ego in the interest of its self-preservation. So, what it's telling us here is that everything is for our benefit, and that it is our ego minds that think and believe that they need to pick and choose what is going to be for their benefit. And that comes into play in regards to everything we do every day. Just before starting this video, my sister-in-law had posted a meme thing of a guy that had picked up some chick's phone that he knew, some girl's phone that he knew. And when he saw what his contact name was there, he gave up on humanity because his contact name was fast food or free food.
Yeah.
And the comments about it, there was some laughs. There were, that's sad. And it had me contemplating it about how we are looking in society and seeing everyone as a resource. We are networking for what we think we can get or what we think we may need. We're not looking at the human being in front of us. We are only looking at them as someone to get something from. Nothing more. This is what we have been taught, to be shallow in this way. To no longer see a human being standing before us. It's like everyone is a vending machine to us in those moments. And that kind of a deep contemplation to happen so swiftly, of understanding of what it is it's talking about there on a deeper level, is the types of things that come forward as you're doing this course, because it has you truly looking at all these things you've been taught to think and do and believe. And right here, this is exactly what our egos have us do. We're no longer just looking at another human being in front of us. We are judging them. We are looking at them as something to get something from, someone to get something from. And that is part of what we are undoing now. We are relearning how to see the human being that stands before us. Alex?
A major source of the ego's off-balance state is its lack of discrimination between the body and the thoughts of God. Thoughts of God are unacceptable to the ego because they clearly point to the non-existence of the ego itself. The ego therefore either distorts them or refuses to accept them. It cannot, however, make them cease to be. It therefore tries to conceal not only unacceptable body impulses, and unacceptable is in quotes, but also the thoughts of God, because both are threatening to it. Being concerned primarily with its own preservation in the face of threat, the ego perceives them as the same. Being concerned primarily with its own preservation in the face of threat, the ego perceives them as the same. Yeah, I said it right. By perceiving them as the same, the ego attempts to save itself from being swept away, as it would surely be in the presence of knowledge.
Wow, I'm having a hard time understanding that. Give me just a moment.
Well, the way I see this is that the ego sees itself as the perishable, as the body. And the first sentence, a major source of the ego's off-balance state is its lack of discrimination between the body and the thoughts of God. The thoughts of God are unacceptable to the ego because they clearly point to the non-existence of the ego itself. And ego being the body identification.
Thoughts of God are unacceptable to you because they clearly point to the non-existent. Okay, I get that. For some reason, it wasn't making any sense to me.
I'll go on again. The ego, therefore, either distorts them or refuses to accept them. It cannot, however, make them cease to be. It therefore tries to conceal not only, quote, unacceptable body impulses, but also the thoughts of God, because both are threatening to it.
So, here's a question. What I get when it says it tries to therefore conceal not only unacceptable body impulses, but also the thoughts of God, because both are threatening to it. So when it says body there, what I'm getting is a thought of the physical acts of the body, like anger, fear. We try to hide those things from people.
Well, right. Well, anything that the ego judges as unacceptable has accepted the judgment of sex, food, whatever it is, it tries
breastfeeding.
Right.
Breastfeeding. It's natural. But yet everyone says it's unnatural, and it simply isn't true.
Right. Right.
So, yeah, as if you can't guess, folks, I breastfed my son for the first year and a half of his life. It's a wonderful bond, and let me tell you, he is that much healthier for it.
You know, one thing that I that's coming up for me while I'm reading this paragraph here goes back to a conversation I had last night on Facebook, and I've been talking about this for a few days, about this person who is very fearful and judgmental of herself and others, and how I kept, sharing the truth with her, and I was compelled to do so, but she would never like any of my comments. And so I had been praying for a while now on what to do about this. Should I continue sharing this? Should I remove her as a friend altogether off of Facebook? Because it seems to be, if she doesn't like what I'm saying, that I am not only wasting her time, but my time as well. And this is not a judgment to her in any way, but the term in the Bible, pearls before swine, was coming up for me.
Yeah, I've had that myself, and I've come to understand, like I was saying, the other day, that in those moments, if with me accepting what is their truth and allowing them to, not trying to change their minds or anything, allowing them to speak as they do, in regards to their beliefs. I'm fine with that. You can believe what you want to believe. And I would like to be able to share with you just as readily what I believe without having you tell me that I'm wrong and need to let go of ACIM and start believing in the God you believe in. And in those instances, I'm told to walk away from them. That those are not the people that I am to keep trying to drag into the light. When I share my truth, they can take it or leave it. It is their choice. I cannot force them to believe as I do, or even to look at the things that they're believing in and asking if they're true. That is their choice and decision. At this moment, she is too afraid to look at what it is that she is believing in. And that's okay. Everyone has their moment in time. We all reach that point. It's why we're here now.
So I just wanted to finish what I was going to say about what's coming to me about this paragraph and how it relates to the conversation I was having with her. And what's coming up for me is how I was assuming that everyone is seeking the truth and that everyone is in a state of readiness for the relinquishment of pain. And there's a phrase in the Course that says, tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. And so during this conversation, I clarified that, we're all seeking the truth. And, if I'm misperceiving, I would hope that, you would correct me as well. And what became very clear to me in her responses is that she was not looking for correction. She was not seeking the truth. She felt that she already knew the truth. She felt that worry and anxiety was, quote, normal. That's just the way things are and the way things should be. And I've never, I don't know, have I never felt that way? I'm not sure. But I know that now I don't feel that way. I know now that fear and anxiety is, well, normal. That's such a judgment. Many people may have it, but it's not
It's not
necessary.
something that we seek.
It's not needed. It's not necessary. Worry and anxiety. And that's the lie. That's the veil that's been pulled over our eyes since the day we were born, where we are told by everyone around us in society, everything you see is how it should be. All the
or
fears,
how it's supposed to be.
All the fears and anxiety, all this is normal.
And it's not.
And it's not.
No, we're just taught that it is because they didn't understand
Well,
what
again,
it was.
normal is a judgment based on, well, everyone else has fear and anxiety, so
It must be okay.
It must be okay, so it's okay to worry about things. And it's not that there's anything wrong with it, it's just that it doesn't feel good. It's not pleasant.
No, it's not a pleasant thing when we worry, like I was saying earlier, I'm his mom. He's my only child. I do worry about him. He's in our military. He faces combat every single day.
And so another sentence that stands out to me here in this paragraph, being concerned primarily with its own preservation in the face of threat, the ego perceives them as the same. So what it's talking about is not just physical preservation, but the preservation of its own thought system. And anytime I would correct her about, say, the word normal, I'd say, well, normal's just a judgment. In her mind, I was attacking her thought system. And so this paragraph here is giving me, because I was really confused. I couldn't understand why somebody would want to hold on to pain, fear, worry, and judgment. It didn't make sense to me.
And it's the egoic thought system.
It's the egoic thought system that wants to preserve itself, not just in physicality, but in its thought system.
Yeah.
It sees change as a threat.
Anything that's different than it. Anyone that thinks differently than they do.
And so the ego thought system literally tries to surround itself with like-minded thinkers. And that's exactly what she has been doing on Facebook. And
It's what we are all taught to do because there's safety in numbers.
Right. And so she has a support group, and she posts on Facebook about her worries, her fears, her pains, and they come back
and
with her suffering, and they come back with sympathy. And
empathy.
Not empathy, sympathy. Empathy is to understand somebody's pain, compassion, but sympathy is empowering victimhood.
Okay.
Sympathy empowers someone.
I've seen some moments of empathy as well, like when she broke her ankle. Initially, there was empathy there. Oh, I am so sorry that happened to you. I hope you get better soon. That's empathy. Okay? So there was a compassion there, knowing that she's in pain.
Right.
So there were signs of empathy there. But I get what you were saying.
Yeah, except the empathy is not what I have an issue with. I have an issue with perpetuating thoughts of victimhood with sympathy.
Yeah.
Perpetuating thoughts of worry, of judgment, of, agreeing with somebody's fears, agreeing with somebody's judgments.
Okay. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are we ready?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and continuing. Paragraph 3. Any thought system that confuses God and the body must be insane. Yet this confusion is essential to the ego, which judges only in terms of threat or non-threat to itself. In one sense, the ego's fear of God is at least logical, since the idea of Him does dispel the ego. But fear of the body, with which the ego identifies so closely, makes no sense at all.
Okay, something just came to me.
Yes.
God-fearing Christian. I never could understand that. It never made any sense to me. This explains it right here. God-fearing Christian.
Well, I'll let you break that down in just a moment, because what I'm getting from this is that we are being taught that God judges this, God judges that, God judges this, God judges that as good, bad, right, wrong. And we have our churches teaching that to us, and our parents reinforcing it, and then we reinforce it with our children, who reinforce it with their children, throughout history here. But it's things like, don't show your ankles. Back in, the 17th century, you don't show your ankles. That was something that a woman didn't do. She always kept her feet and her ankles covered. Don't show your knees, or don't show your calves, things like that, where society started dictating what was good and what was not, what was right, what was wrong. And those kind of things get perpetuated, like, it's bad, it's wrong, it's gross, it's disgusting to stick your finger in your ear and scratch inside. It's wrong to scratch yourself in any private portion of your body. Pass gas. And we are taught to judge it as being bad, wrong, and to fear doing those things. Think about it, folks. When you went out on that first date, how you were hoping and praying you didn't belch, didn't fart, didn't sneeze, didn't pee yourself, didn't fall, all these things that you were praying to not happen, judging as being bad things to happen. And then look at you now with that person that you're with. Doesn't matter if he's in there taking a shower and you have to go in there and go pee. You go. It doesn't seem to matter anymore. Changing clothes, where we were taught to keep everything covered up, to be ashamed of our bodies. And now it's just like, okay, I'm going to go take a shower, be back. And you go and don't even think nothing of it. It's those kinds of things that we are taught to be ashamed of, and we teach our children the same thing until we stop doing it, until we learn that it doesn't matter. And every time something happens in relationships where you get comfortable like that, and then for those of us that have had to start over, start again, in having to worry and stress about being judged again when we are seeking companionship. And in those moments, we fall back into that egoic thought system. And it's not necessary. We go back into a fear state, a sense of loss and loneliness. And we start fearing how we look, how we feel inside, when our spouses pass away, things of that nature. And these are the kinds of things that are being said to me with this paragraph. Is that these are the attachments that we have and we believe in and we put our trust and faith into. when we are having to start out cold turkey in the world again, without that bolster, that companionship we had. When we are seeking companionship again, we are worried about being judged. It's a fearful thing until we face it and realize we don't have to accept it. We can see past it and recognize it's their judgments of themselves, of what they believe and think about themselves, just as we used to do. Alex, what were you saying about the Christ mind?
I wasn't saying anything about the Christ mind. I was talking about how Christians claim to be God-fearing Christians.
Thank you, God-fearing.
And how that correlates with the sentence here in the paragraph.
Mm-hmm.
In one sense, the ego's fear of God is at least logical, since the idea of him does dispel the ego.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes sense why you would have a God-fearing Christian, because the ego believes in the body, the ego believes in sin and guilt and fear. And,
which is everything that she was believing in.
Right. And God represents none of that. God represents innocence, represents love and light and eternity.
Yeah.
And the
everlasting life.
The ego is afraid of eternity. I'm not totally sure why. The ego seems to almost, I don't know what the word for it is, but there's something about being finite, to be born to die, is something that, I don't know, almost seems to be exciting for the ego, threatening yet exciting and challenging.
Well, it's why people become adrenaline junkies. They are always pushing the edge of life. Because at any moment, they could die. Like that little video of that guy going down that little freaking trail that was about that wide along the top of a freaking cliff mountain ridge.
You mean, on a bicycle?
Yeah, on a bicycle.
On a mountain bicycle, yeah.
Oh, I'm afraid of, oh my goodness, I am terrified of heights.
Well, that was a particularly frightening video because the cam the guy was wearing was a fisheye cam, and it made it look like it was, a mile drop off. It may not have been that bad, but it certainly looked like it.
Ugh, the mental pictures I'm getting is making my stomach churn. Yeah, I don't like heights.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Ugh. Yeah, it's that purview of how it was just that thin road.
Yeah.
4.
The body is the ego's home by its own election. It is the only identification with which the ego feels safe, since the body's vulnerability is its own best argument that you cannot be of God. So I think that's answering the question that I just asked. This is the belief that the ego sponsors eagerly. Yet the ego hates the body because it cannot accept it as good enough to be its home. Here is where the mind becomes actually dazed, being told by the ego that it is really part of the body and that the body is its protector. The mind is also told that the body cannot protect it. Therefore, the mind asks, "Where can I go for protection?" To which the ego replies, quote, "Turn to me." The mind, and not without cause, reminds the ego that it has itself insisted that it is identified with the body, so there is no point in turning to it for protection. The ego has no real answer to this because there is none, but it does have a typical solution. It obliterates the question from the mind's awareness. Interjecting here, In other words, like we hear so much in the community, oh, don't look at that thought. Don't look at the dark thoughts. Don't ask that question. Don't ask questions. Don't think. That's what I saw in the Healing with Sharing group today. Don't think. Ooh, thinking is of the ego. Don't think.
Yeah. You know, we can't stop the thoughts that come into our mind, but we can look at them differently. And this isn't about stopping thinking. This is about looking at everything you are thinking. Looking at everything you are thinking to be true and believing to be true, that you're putting your faith and trust into, that you have defined yourself, everyone around you, and the world you are in by. These things are what we are looking at, folks. So that thought to not look at it, this is telling you, look at all of that shit. Don't pass up a damn bit of it.
It's also clarifying that that's exactly what the ego says. Don't look at those thoughts.
Exactly.
Don't ask those questions.
That's why I keep saying that when people are saying these things to you about not looking at it, ignoring it, denying it, they are enlightened egos. They are only looking at preserving their egos. They are twisting what is being said to mean and be what they want it to mean. Think about that, folks. Enlightened egos. Anytime you hear them say, don't look at that, you don't need to talk about that, fake it till you make it.
Don't think.
Don't think.
Don't look at those dark thoughts.
Don't look at those dark thoughts. There's no need to look at anything that happened in the past. The past isn't real. It never happened.
Just accept everything exactly as it is.
Without looking at it, and just keep happy thoughts. All of that is ego mind, folks. Enlightened egos. Very, very clear. You will hear them for what they are. Enlightened egos. If they do not share of their own experiences in the truths that they have been shown through them, they say nothing. That is what I have been getting shown. They are not saying anything. They are stringing a bunch of sounds together that have no meaning. Please continue, Alex.
So I'll back up a little bit.
Okay.
It obliterates the question from the mind's awareness. Once out of awareness, the question can and does produce an uneasiness. Uneasiness.
There you go.
But it cannot be answered because it cannot be asked.
Yeah. It's part of what we've been taught to do. To hide from it, run from it, and ignore it. And anytime that anxiousness comes up, to immediately attack. Because we are then in fear that we are being mortally threatened. We are about to die, is the semblance of understanding that I'm getting right now. It's like it is a fear of death in that moment. Let's continue. 5. This is the question that must be asked. Where can I go for protection? Seek and ye shall find does not mean that you should seek blindly and deliberately for something you would not recognize.
I have the word desperately instead of deliberately here.
Yeah, you are right. So let me go ahead and start that over again, please. Where can I go for protection? Seek and ye shall find does not mean that you should seek blindly and desperately for something you would not recognize. Meaningful seeking is consciously undertaken, consciously organized, and consciously directed. The goal must be formulated clearly and kept in mind. Learning and wanting to learn are inseparable. You learn best when you believe what you are trying to learn is of value to you. However, not everything you may want to learn has lasting value. Indeed, many of the things you want to learn may be chosen because their value will not last. Indeed, many of the things you want to learn may be chosen because their value will not last. Wow.
I'm trying to think of an example of something that someone might want to learn that's valuable to them because it won't last. I know many things in this world that are related to things of this world, like, how to fix a certain computer, or how to fix a car, or any computer for that matter. Those things are temporary. In my business, go ahead.
That's exactly it. It's valuing the valueless in one aspect, but we are taught to seek out a degree and learn a bunch of stuff from a book, a diploma, whatever. And we go through our lives chasing after these things, trying to learn more, only to find out we don't know the right thing and go and search for another thing. And each time we are spinning our wheels, seriously spinning our wheels, because we're constantly chasing after this knowledge that is valueless.
It reminds me of a Facebook meme I saw just yesterday or the day before, that talked about, freshman year in college,
Sophomore year,
junior and senior year, and then when you finally graduate, it shows. I think it was the same character in different scenes. It shows him as a homeless man because he can't find a job because
his degree is useless.
He majored or he got a degree in something that was useless. And so, that would be something that didn't last. At the time when he started it, it looked very promising, but 4 years later down the road, it didn't have the value he thought it had.
Exactly. And that is truly how we are taught to think and believe. That's what I was talking about earlier about the whole networking thing. We're taught to look at people as resources. That we are getting these titles, these degrees that say that we have this title because we know this stuff, so that we can then belabor our own opinion to someone else and have them say, wow, really? And then pay us money for it. So we look at them as a resource, a way to get ahead, someone to step on to get to the next place I want to be. And we're constantly seeking outside of ourselves, folks, spinning our wheels, constantly looking to this person and that person, wanting their thoughts, their opinions, their judgments on everything, and listening to it, believing it as being true, and not going with what you feel in your heart, what your heart is telling you, not your head. When you really look at these things that you are wanting to do, think in, and believe in, it's what feels right here in the heart, not the head. We keep placing value on the valueless. Alex.
The ego thinks it is an advantage not to commit itself to anything that is eternal, because the eternal must come from God. Eternalness is the one function the ego has tried to develop, but has systematically failed to achieve. The ego compromises with the issue of the eternal, just as it does with all issues touching on the real question in any way. By becoming involved with tangible issues, it hopes to hide the real question and keep it out of mind. The ego's characteristic busyness with non-essentials is for precisely that purpose. And what I'm getting that's coming in my head while reading this is the elections coming up. People are totally distracted by the elections and all the world's problems. And there's this time during the elections historically is when a lot of presidents sneak in a lot of things that otherwise the people would not allow. By becoming involved with tangible issues, I see I'm backing up here, that's
Yeah,
fine.
it's tangential.
Tangential?
Tangential.
Well, it's spelled tangential.
No, it's shul. Tial.
Okay. Tangential. Okay. By becoming involved with tangential, I don't think that's right. Issues. Still don't think that's the right pronunciation. It hopes to hide the real question and keep it out of mind. The ego's characteristic busyness with non-essentials is for precisely that purpose.
Interjecting. What was that word? Non-essentials?
Non-essentials, yeah.
N-T-I-A-L? N-T-I-A-L?
All right, so apparently we're going to make a big deal out of how to pronounce a word here
what
on
I'm pointing
camera.
out is the similarity in the spelling, which usually designates how it's pronounced.
Let's see what dictionary.reference.com says how to pronounce it.
Now, I told you I'm usually right.
Tangential.
Shul.
I'm looking at the screen here. TAN-GEN-SHUH space L. Tangential. Tangential.
Is that not what I said?
May I continue, please?
Yes, sweetheart. Thank you. I love you.
The ego's characteristic busyness with non-essentials is for precisely that purpose. Preoccupations with problems set up to be incapable of solution are favorite ego devices for impeding learning progress. For impeding learning progress. In all these diversionary tactics, however, the one question that is never asked by those who pursue them is, what for? This is the question that you must learn to ask in connection with everything. What is the purpose? Whatever it is, it will direct your efforts automatically. When you make a decision of purpose, then you have made a decision about your future effort, a decision that will remain in effect unless you change your mind. Hence, going back to that Facebook conversation I had with that woman, where I stated my purpose is in seeking the truth, it became clear that her purpose is not in seeking the truth.
Exactly. I keep saying, in looking at your thoughts when they come up and you are looking at them, asking, what is this for? What's the purpose of this? Why is it here? Where did it come from? What is it telling me? What am I believing? These are the questions that come to me when these thoughts come into my mind. And every time I'm like, okay, Holy Spirit, I don't know what any of this is for. I don't know why this is here and what's going on with it, but please show me why it's there. What is it you would have me see in this? And every time I'm shown. And when I'm shown, I get that, in that moment, I get to choose. I get to change my mind about what it is I want to believe. And I can take that truth into me and extend it. And the ego uses many diversionary tactics. And as Alex was saying, we use things like these elections. Looking at all these different candidates, they are using so many diversionary tactics to try and get folks to not look at what needs to be looked at. They're talking about everything but what needs to be talked about. And they keep telling you only what you want to hear. None of them are speaking with any truth or knowledge about these things because they can't. They have no true knowledge of what it is that's going on. Like us, they only know little bits and pieces. And so they're faking it. You know, there's a couple out there that are speaking from the heart of what they truly believe based off of their faith. But in everything, recognize if they're telling you and saying to you what you think you want to hear, question yourself. Question what it is you're valuing there. Ask what it's for, why you're doing it. You might surprise yourself with the answers. Are we ready to move on?
Yeah.
Lesson 36?
Yes.
Excellent. My holiness envelops everything I see. Today's idea extends the idea for yesterday from the perceiver to the perceived. You are holy because your mind is part of God's. And because you are holy, your sight must be holy as well. Sinless means without sin. You cannot be without sin a little. You are sinless or not. If your mind is part of God's, you must be sinless, or a part of His mind would be sinful. Your sight is related to His holiness, not to your ego, and therefore not to your body. It's recognizing that you are absolutely perfect in every way, just as you are. You are perfect, you are beautiful, you are holy, you are without sin. God does not make the imperfect.
And God does not make mistakes.
You are perfect in every way. You are not a mistake. You are here because you are worthy. everyone around you that is here are here because they are worthy.
Not because something has gone wrong in the Garden of Eden.
Not because they incurred God's wrath. Nothing of the sort. You are all worthy. You are all pure, beautiful, and holy. You are absolutely perfect, just as you are. Please continue.
4 3 to 5 minute practice periods are required for today. Try to distribute them fairly evenly and make the shorter applications frequently to protect your protection throughout the day. The longer practice periods should take this form.
Okay, so I have a question here for you.
Mm-hmm.
Decipher that last sentence there.
Yeah. I would love to, because I'm not sure what that means, where it says, and make the shorter applications frequently to protect your protection. Protect what protection?
So, wait, it says, try to distribute them fairly evenly and make the shorter applications frequently to protect your protection throughout the day.
Well, let's go back to the lesson title, which is My Holiness Envelops Everything I See.
Ah, okay. Yeah, it feels like something was dropped from that. Okay. Okay, so what was the... I'm getting that the next paragraph is saying first close your eyes. Or is there something
Yeah,
else in
it does.
between?
It says first close your eyes. And then I'm also going back to the first sentence in the first paragraph where it says, today's idea extends the idea for yesterday from the perceiver to the perceived.
I get it. So it's like we are seeing the people outside of us now, and not just what we're
Right,
seeing in
we're
here.
seeing the holiness in everything we see,
Yeah.
not just the holiness in us.
Exactly.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See, I knew something wasn't clicking.
Well, you actually helped me because I didn't. That's why I paused when I read that. It didn't make sense to me. So
Yeah, and I'm going, okay, I know I'm dyslexic and things sound like gibberish half the time. So I need this to be explained to me. So thank you very much, dear. Okay, so it says, paragraph 3. First, close your eyes and repeat the idea for today several times slowly. Then open your eyes and look quite slowly about you, applying the idea specifically to whatever you note in your casual survey. Say, for example, my holiness envelops that rug. My holiness envelops that wall. My holiness envelops these fingers. My holiness envelops that chair. My holiness envelops that body. My body. My holiness envelops this pen here. Several times during these practice periods, close your eyes and repeat the idea to yourself. Then open your eyes and continue as before. So, do as it says. Repeat the idea multiple times so that you envelop it within your being to be able to see it without you. Go ahead.
for the shorter exercise periods, close your eyes and repeat the idea. Look about you as you repeat it again, and conclude with one more repetition with your eyes closed. All applications should, of course, be made quite slowly, as effortlessly and as unhurriedly as possible.
This was lesson 36. My holiness envelops everything I see. And chapter 4, the illusions of the ego. Section 5, the ego-body illusion. Lots of clarity came home for us today in this.
Yeah. I've literally got goosebumps right now thinking about this. I mean, it feels very profound to me.
Yeah, even though it's stuff that I have been talking about for a long time, it's sometimes we don't all get it all at once.
Yeah, this is a circular process. And, there's been people that have been doing this course for 20, 30 years. And, when I first started doing the course, I had this idea that after a year, I would just simply get it.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe eventually it'll be that way. But, for now, this is a process of undoing, of
Mm-hmm.
repeating over and over again until we get it.
Yeah, and don't get disheartened with this, folks. We've been doing this course. This is our 4th year doing this. And, it started coming to me, some of the things that this was saying. But over time, more and more of the pieces fall into place. And now I no longer fight the things that I'm being shown. Like today, just before we started, I had saw that Mimi. And it gave me a huge contemplation of how society thinks, how we relate to each other. And that kind of contemplation actually correlated beautifully with this text here today and how we view everyone around us. So it shows us how everything is connected. As we go through this, it takes time and it takes effort to look at everything, but it gets easier. You will find moments of extreme peace and then moments of extreme upheaval. And then other times you start getting to a point of calmness and understanding. Even when things aren't going correctly, you will still have moments that you will blow up, that you will have things that you will be very passionate about, like when Alex and I were having that dialogue a couple lessons ago. And as that happened, we were both looking and contemplating the things that were being said to us and what we were saying to each other. And really looking at what we were thinking and believing, how we are perceiving things. There are parts in the Old Testament that have talked about how do not place your faith in a son of man. Your faith and trust in a son of man. They are perishable. Those kinds of things it talks about in the Old Testament. That was a decree of God. Only place your faith and trust in God, for only He can know. Only He can save you. And only He can judge you. And it's why I have this understanding within me, this belief that Jesus was a man. He was born of the flesh. He was a man. My understanding is that there is no other God before Him. So that means I'm not to put anyone, not even Jesus, or Buddha, or Krishna, or Allah, or Jehovah, Yahweh, Yeshua, none of them before I am. And that's my understanding of that. And in all of this is teaching us that we need to let go of those things that we've been taught to believe about the people around us and ask His guidance on what the truth is. for many of us, he feels very far away. And this is why he has placed Holy Spirit as our guide. When we turn to Holy Spirit, we get that direct connectivity flowing. That's why all of the ego thoughts and beliefs start falling away. We gain that inner peace to know in our hearts that everything is for our benefit. Everything is perfect and as it needs to be for us to experience what we are here to experience, to learn the lesson and get the understanding we are and have been seeking, to see the truth of who and what we are and who and what our brothers are, without blinders anymore. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. It's been a beautiful lesson in contemplation, in conversation and dialogue about these truths we are being shown and being asked to share. Have a wonderful day. My name is Sabrina Reyenga.
And I'm Alex Reyenga.
Thank you for joining us. Namaste.